this is Jamie Magritte. Welcome to Jamie's Craft Table. Today I'm going to show you how I made this card. Okay, so let's get started. I'm bringing my supplies. I'm using Grassy Grove. And the coordinating dies, Grove dies. I've previously cut out from a scrap some of the deer. Put this piece aside for a second. This is cut from 1 3/8 by 3 1/4 inch piece. I've got one here so I can show you. And yeah, I'll go over that in a minute. I have a 1 3/8 by 3 1/4 inch pieces of this can be either designer series paper, or in this instance I'm using white and I'm going to stamp on it. I have 3 pieces of designer series paper, pattern 1, which is 1 3/8 by 3 1/4. You can use all the same pattern, that's fine too. I have 2 pieces of pattern 2, which is 1 3/8 by 3 1/4, and one that is 1 3/4 by 3 1/4. This is the piece to cut out with the die. It is 3 1/4 by 5 inches. I have a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece of black, and I used a second from the largest stitched rectangle, and I cut out a frame. This piece is to save for another time. I have 3 pieces that are 4 1/4 by 1 7/8 inches. Now you might want to go to 1 15/16, a little bit wider, because that might eliminate this space here. 2 inches is too wide, and you end up with it hanging over here. The end. I mean, it still works, but it hangs over here. So I think the 1 7/8 works. You just have a little bit of space there. If you want the 1 15/16, it might be right where you need it to be. Okay. And then I have a 4 by 5 1/4 inch piece, which I've cut that second from the largest stitch rectangle out of the center of, and another piece that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and these are both thick. All the white except for the 3 little ones are the thick. Okay, I've already cut out the deer from the scrap. This piece, I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. Let me go and do that, and I will be right back. Okay, now with this piece, at this end here, I cut this. This is 1 3/8 inches. So I put it in my trimmer. I'll just go ahead and do it and show you. 1 3/8. So 1 2 3/8, just before the 1 1/2, and I trimmed it. Okay, so that's the first piece. I'm going to lose a little piece, but that's fine. Then I went 1 3/8 again. Let's turn it around. And now I'm going to go 1 3/8 again from the other side. 1 3/8. Okay, so that gives me this side. And I came in with my snips because there's a couple awkward spots here, and I just trimmed this little piece out here. See that? awkward one right there. Just trim that out. It looks stupid. Okay, then I came in this, what's left here, where the trunk is, that side, I went to 1 3/8. I might have to turn it over so you can see your lines. And this is kind of hard to do because it's so skinny, wants to move. Okay, so then you have this part is waist. So then you have your 3 pieces. Okay, and this one, it's got this little bit of, I just trim that to make it neater. Okay, so those are the 3 pieces for that. Let's start assembling. First, we've got to take these pieces. Well, let's stamp first, and then we'll assemble. So let's bring in the stamps. I'm just using memento ink. I'm actually going to lay these out right next to each other. If they move a little bit, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. And I'm going to come in with the memento black ink. Now, I saw this card on somebody else's channel, but they had made it a larger size, and I wanted one that would fit in a standard A2 size envelope. Okay, so I ink this up, and I'm going to stamp this portion here. This large thing's going to hang off the end. I'm just going to stamp this down here at the bottom. Okay. Now this one is not going to get anything else stamped on it. The center one, I'm going to come in with this tree one. I'm going to stamp those trees. There's like hills here in the front. I'm going to have those trees sitting in that hill. Okay. And that's all I did for that part. Okay. Now I'm going to take this big piece, this one here, which is 1 3/4 by 3 1/4. I'm going to bring in that sentiment. Stamp that up here at the top. It's very fine, so don't press too hard, but it's a very nice stamp. I'm going to come back in with this one. Come in the opposite end. Stamp that on there. Okay, and that's all stamping on that one. Okay, now I'm going to bring in these two. I probably should have lined those all up together when I stamp that, but that's alright. Be about here, so let's do that. Stamp this on the bottom here. Okay. And I'm going to bring in this tree one. didn't get the sticker put on this one yet. And on this one, stamped over this way. Oops, I want it down more. And then on this one, I stamped the other side. Okay. Those can get put aside. And I believe I'm done with all my stamping. Okay. So now I'm going to come in with these pieces here. And those pieces that we cut, we're going to mount on top of there. Bring in the wet glue. You want to be sparing with the glue, but I mean, a little bit goes a long way. You don't want it oozing out. Okay. Little bits. Line up the top and bottom. It's not as urgent side to side, but ideally they would match the size of your piece underneath. If you want to cut your width and your height a little bit bigger, then trim it off, you could do that too. Oops. Okay, so there's those. And we're going to bring in those deer. I want one of the little baby deer. Come on, pick up. Pick it up off the table today. And the little baby deer is going to go right here. Okay. The large deer is going to go on this one. You don't want it to cover up your sentiment, so I think I did not use that other deer, the other little one, but you could put it on one of these if you wanted to. Okay, let's put these aside then. And we can do our scoring. Now let's move this. And I'm going to bring in this scoring board because it fits in my space, but the trimmer works. This one works wonderfully. It just doesn't fit in my space for videoing, so this is easier to video with. Okay. Now these three pieces that are 4 1/4 by 1 7/8, we're going to score the two short sides at 3/8 inch. I'm going to score both of them, both ends, 3/8 of an inch. One of the long sides, 3/8 of an inch all the way, and the other long side, we'll going to score at 3/8 of an inch, but only to this score line. So 3/8 to that score line, and then at the bottom 3/8 to that score line. Okay, we're going to do that on all of these. 3/8, 3/8, 3/8. 3/8 to the score line. 1, 2, 3, 3/8 from the score line. And the last one. 3/8, 3/8. So basically 3 sides, 2 short sides and 1 long side are getting 3/8 of an inch score. The other side is just getting the 3/8 inch on the 2 little sides that are scored already. And I've got a little template here so you can see. It's reversed, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. Now we're going to remove this rectangle here. So we're going to come in with our snips. We're going to clip up on that score line. We're going to fold these tabs away. We're going to clip off this. You could use your trimmer for this if you'd like. I just use my scissors. Okay. And then on the other side, we're going to clip up here so that the tabs go the same direction. We're going to clip here. Then I'm going to move over about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to clip a little space out. You might have to adjust that depending on where you cut your frame out of. Okay, and we're going to do that with all 3 of them. So we're going to cut up here to the score line, cut up here to the score line. I'm going to fold these back, remove this, come over to the other side, clip just to that little score line we made, go in about 1/8 of an inch, snip that out, one more. Okay, clip up to the score line, up to the score line, fold the tabs away, clip that out, turn to the other side, clip up just to that little score line we made, go over about 1/8 of an inch, take that out, okay. Now we're going to bring in this piece and we're going to do a dry fit. Now this, we want to make sure that all these little tabs fold freely, so make sure they're burnished or folded both directions so that they fold, because those are our hinges. Okay, so we're going to put this in here just to make sure that we've snipped out enough so that they move freely. You'll see on this one that I made, they're a little close to the top there. It works, but just barely. You give a little bit of space, it's moves easier and it doesn't bind. Okay, so just make sure that you have enough space, and you're going to want the long tab to be going all the same direction. It depends on where you've cut your square. If it's a little bit off, you might need to trim one of those a little more. Okay, so now We're going to take these. I'm going to go ahead and start adding pieces. I found it easier to do before I put it together. I'll lay these out like this. This is the front side. So I'm going to take these, and I'm going to adhere those to the center of this flap. Center it up. Make sure it doesn't hang over the where you've trimmed it. Okay, one more. Okay, so those are the fronts. Now if we flip them over, we're going to put these pattern 1 designer series paper. Now you could do all the same. That would work too, but I chose to do it a little, just so it looked, you could tell it was the back side. Okay. This is that Pattern Party Designer Series paper, which you can get as a host reward. Okay, now we're going to bring in our solid piece. Gotta make sure we leave these in the right order. I'm going to move this so that it's not in the way here. I'm going to try it with tear and tape. I used the wet glue before. I'm going to put adhesive on the back of this flap and on the front of this flap. They're not going to get folded at this time, so you're just going to turn it over this way. I'm going to put the adhesive on the back of this flap. And the front of this flap. Okay, we're going to do that to all of them. The back of this flap. And the front of this flap. Okay, the back of this flap. And the front of this one. You only want the glue on those little tabs though. Don't want the glue anywhere else. Okay. Alright, let's start with the first one. We're going to take the backing off of the left side. the one that's on the back of the tab. Make sure any glue that's sticking over is folded over onto itself. We're going to line this up top to bottom with the edge of the card. We're going to come over about a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge. And we're going to adhere that down. Okay. Then we're going to fold these flaps over. We're not taking the backs off yet, just so they're out of the way. We're going to come in with the next piece. Take those the liners off. Roll any glue that's in the way out of the way, off the edge. Okay, these flaps are going to go into those spaces under where those flaps are, but you're going to leave about a 1/16 of an inch between the edge of this and the edge of this. Make sure you're lined up top to bottom. And you're straight. And stick it down. It's a little crooked, but alright, fold these tabs back. Repeat with this one. Line up top to bottom. Glue those tabs down. You might want to, I'll just use this one since I have it here, burnish those. Make sure those stay stuck. Okay, now before we move on, we're going to open this up. And we're going to adhere our layer pieces underneath. Make sure you get them in the right order, although it wouldn't probably matter. It's going to get centered in this space here. Okay, we're going to open up this one. We're going to do the same with this one. Center it up in this space here. Flip this one over. This one with the sentiment goes here. It's not a difficult, I mean, it's really simple. It just has got a lot of wow to it. Just feels like it would be difficult. Now fold those all back down. We're going to take the backings off of all of these tabs. Make sure there's no hanging over glues. Ooh, that one doesn't have much glue on it. I'm just going to add a little wet glue. You don't want to use too much wet glue because you don't want it to ooze out. Then it sticks. In fact, I'm going to take this and smear it so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, now I'm going to take that frame that we made with the white. I'm going to line up the edges over here. There isn't any glue, so that's the easiest way to do it. Line up the edges and set it down right on top of those tabs. Make sure they get adhered good. Quick burnish over them. card should work at this point. Might need a little bit of training because those hinges are a little bit stiff. So then we're going to fold it all the way open. Like this. Now it should work. This time, see if you need to trim any of these. I think it's working fairly well. Okay, now we're going to take that black frame. This part is optional, you don't have to do that. I just found it dressed it up a little bit nicer. I'll just use wet glue. That gives me that wiggle room so I can move it where I want to. Line that up so it matches up with the frame you have there. There you go, and there's our card. Here's the one we made together. Here's the one I did previously. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today at Jamie's Craft Table. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope you can find a little bit of time to play with some stamps, ink, and paper.